it can bring about a sense of appreciation, a gratitude to the things that you have, and you're happy for them, not because of your struggle, but because of what they have. And therefore, they now have a sense of appreciation for something. And therefore, then they're going to give that over to others, to hopefully their kids. And then that's going to bring about that connection for what we're looking for.
Welcome to The Power of Family, the podcast where we help families talk, listen, and connect across generations. I'm your host, Terry Willis. Today's conversation is one I'm really grateful for. I'm joined by Chananya Abraham, who brings a thoughtful and refreshing perspective on family, connection, and real-life challenges many families face today. This is a conversation about connection, understanding, and what families actually need right now. Chananya, welcome to The Power of Family.
Well, good morning, Terry. Thank you so much for having me. This is a real treat and honor.
No. It's my treat. It's my treat as I begin this journey here of trying to make that bridge between grandparents and children and parents and their children as well. Because as I shared with you previously, my issue is that I've had that generational gap with my grandchildren. And that's how this podcast was born, because of the issues I was having. And I said that something here has to be done. I'm not the only grandparent who's facing this generational gap. And I said, just let me take my left foot and move my right foot with it and get something done. And that's how, again, this podcast was born. And I'm glad that you have agreed to be a guest here as we put things together and move forward. Well, I'd like to start by asking you then, speaking of that generational thing here, are you noticing a family breakdown, or are you noticing that traditions are not being passed down anymore?
Well, that's a very loaded question. Let's break it down a little bit over here. So when we talk about the generational gap, I think one of the things that's really important to talk about is the language that is used in different generations. What I mean by that is that the way grandparents would go about conversing with their parents is very different than the way they would be going about conversing with their grandkids. And obviously, at the same time, we talk about the grandkids, there's a generational gap. There's also a communication and how there's communication when it comes to their own kids. And if there was, or there is, a disconnect with their own kids, then there's not going to be a healthy or a good, safe connection to that next generation, which are the grandkids. So we want to be able to get everyone on the same page. It's not something that happens overnight. And I think that's very important. And sometimes it's not necessarily something that we have full control over. But I think for the sake of this conversation, let's talk about what we can do. And as grandparents and as someone that's been in this field close to 2 decades and working on this concept of communication when it comes to parents, grandparents, and their kids, I think one of the things is to make sure, well, let's break it down like this. So communication has 2 parts to it. And that's the way I see it. It's what I say and what it is that you hear. And just because I'm saying something doesn't mean that you're going to hear it, Terry. So I have to make sure that when I'm talking to you, the words that I'm saying are the words you're hearing them for what works for you. And if there was a communication static when it came to the grandparent and their kid, so then the kid is going to be like, well, I didn't really get along with, or I didn't have close connection with, or I couldn't have affiliation with something that might traditionally or religiously or familially when it came to how we went about doing things. So I don't want to pass that on to my kid. I don't want to have that, my child, and now have a connection to that grandparent. So then the question is, okay, if that's the case, there are a few different things that, we can talk about over here. First, as parents, and then as grandparents, this falls into the same category. One of the most vital things that we need to think about as parents and as grandparents is the concept that we are valuable human beings. We make mistakes and we're not perfect. I know for some people that might be hard to hear, but at the same time, I think it's really important for people to know that we do make mistakes. And one of the greatest lessons that we can give over to our kids is that us as parents, we messed up and we mess up. And that's really important. And if our child never felt that from us and we put ourselves, whether it was by force or organically, on this pedestal that like, whatever I say goes here in this house, no matter what. And the words, because I said so, are tattooed into a child's brain for how things work in this house. When the kid gets to the point of their own independence, which starts way before they become their own parent themselves, usually starts somewhere around puberty, around, the early teenage years where the concept of autonomy and independence is wanted and going to be gotten by the child, acquired by the child. The concept then of wanting to connect to that parent that was on that pedestal is going to be really difficult. So then when the next generation comes around, why would there wanting to be a relationship with that person then? Because that's not a person I was able to relate to. So I don't think you, who's the next generation over, is going to be able to connect to them. So we're not going to do that. So I think that's the first thing, is to breaking down the concept of connection and understanding what it is that we're giving over. And also that we make mistakes. And I think it's okay for parents to be able to say to their kids, hey, I messed up and I'm learning and I'm growing. And if that's going to work from a parent to a child, so why can't a grandparent to their own child do the same thing? Because then what we're doing is we are reconnecting the bridge so that to get to the other side, the grandchild over here that we're talking about will be able to be something that we could connect to. So that's the first step over here that I think is really important when we talk about connection, when we talk about collaborating, when we talk about collaboration that we want in order to have that connection to the other side of the bridge, making sure that we could connect and that there are times we didn't connect properly and we messed up on that. So I think that's really important. Now, when we get into more specific, when we talk about the concepts of a certain tradition that we have, do we know that child that is now their own, they are a parent themselves? How did that child, what was their association with that tradition? Let's pick, for example, Sunday night dinner, right? Something that, your son may have grown up with. And again, I'm just giving an example over here, just to keep, so your listeners can sort of understand what we're talking about. So let's say in your home, you have Sunday night dinner every week. And while that dinner is happening, there are two things happening. First of all, football game is on in the background the entire time, and dad's facing the TV. And also, all electronics are allowed by the table. Now, this is not going to be a conversation about electronics, okay? But I'm just giving an example over here.
Sure.
When we talk about having those two things. Now, here's a kid, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. And all he knows about Sunday dinner that we have to have as a family is dad's watching the football game and everyone's on the electronics. So we may be eating at the same table, but we're not eating together. So now when that kid is going to be older, let's say he goes away for boarding school or he goes to college, university, and he's studying with friends and they're all sitting around the table together, studying and eating, and they're having a good time and laughing. He's like, oh, this is really fun. So the concept for him of having family dinner was like, that wasn't fun. There was nothing cool about that because what was that? That was us sitting around the table. That's so nice. Air quotations over here. But at the same time, if I'm able to have this is more fun. Why wouldn't I want to do this? So now when that kid is living in a different city, he's establishing himself in his career, within his family, with his partner, and they're now going to have a family. And they're going to be like, okay, so, what should we do, Sundays? Well, why would I want to go back to my parents' house where dad was facing the TV and didn't talk to me at all? Not because it was a bad thing, but just like there was nothing connecting to that. So now that kid's going to want to do his own thing. He's like, what? I remember some study groups that we had where we all went to a restaurant, brought some, books and stuff in the middle of learning and we could talk about it. And that was awesome. So let's do that. Let's call, our friends and let's get together and let's have Sunday dinner every single week together because that would be more fun. And now the grandparents like, hey, what about us? Like, what about you? Well, we have Sunday dinner. I'm like, no. We didn't have Sunday dinner. We had dinner together on a table, but we weren't together having dinner together. And I think that's really important for a grandparent to realize that what is your child connecting to? And if they're not connecting to certain things, then why would they want to then continue that relationship? It could be fixed. We can work on that. And we can say to our kid, let's continue a way of bridging our connection so that the next generation will then be a part of it. It's never too late, but understand where that child is coming from. I know I said a lot of things over there, Terry, but I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Well, you did, but this is what this program is all about. It's giving families the information and the tools in which they can use to break down to the most common denominator what is causing the issues in the first place. And that is what I'm hearing here from your decades of experience. You are giving them the tools in which they need. And that is what must be applied as we move forward, each of us, in every way. When families say that they're struggling, it often comes back to communication. What usually breaks down first?
Well, I'll answer a little bit differently. I think a lot of times when communication is not working, it's because at least one side, but most of the time two, are letting their egos get in the way.
Not
And
the ego,
let me
not the ego.
yes, I wish that was true. And most of the time, and I think ego in a certain way, it could be a good thing because it gives us a sense of uh, feeling a sort of a sense of pride and confidence. So ego can be used properly, but when it's not in check, and when we think that everything is about us, and like, what do you mean? I need you here for Sunday night dinner because that's what we do. Explain more. Talk about that more. But if that's something that, what do you mean? Because this is what we do, and there's no explanation given. So now the other side that's trying to have their own identity and create their own family unit, why would they want to be a part of that? Like, talk more. Say because it makes us feel fulfilled. It's something that brings connection, and it brings a value to the previous generations and other people around us, and shut off the game. But if you want to have that family setting and put yourself in a place where you can be that patriarch of the family or the matriarch of the family. Okay, what is needed by the people here? Well, it's connection, it's love, it's being able to show that we're there for each other. And even though we may be living in different cities or have different things of the way we go about our upbringings, we have different spouses, go to different schools, but we can still come together and all be one and have fun and laugh and love each other and learn from each other and grow together. Great. That's a good reason to have Sunday night dinner. But if what it's going to be is, well, we do this because this is what we do, that's not going to be enough for your child. So it's going to break down if we're letting our egos get in the way. If that wasn't explained of why we do this, then why would someone want to be a part of that? And I think it's very important, and I talk about this in my office all the time. I guess, the acronym that I would use is ABC. Always be curious. I can't take full credit for that. A mentor of mine, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote an amazing book, The Body Keeps the Score, really talks about this a lot and concept of being curious and where trauma sort of resides in the body and how it comes out, and how when we feel uncomfortable in certain situations, we're not going to want to go back or associate with that again. And our body feels it first sometimes before we even know that's happening. So what do we do when something's, it's like if you're about to get close to an open oven, right? So what do? We take a step back because, I don't want to get burnt. And our bodies will do the same thing when we're going to situations that could be burning us. And for those that are listening, I'm also doing air quotations again. But the concept of being able to be connected to something, if our bodies are not going to feel comfortable, we're going to stay away from it. So our child, if we have certain traditions, and, let's give another example over here. If let's say there's going to be, going to temple on Saturday or going to church on Sunday, and we force our kids to do those things when they were younger to the point where they won't be able to watch, Saturday cartoons. They won't be able to play with their friends. They won't be able to get blank, whatever it is. And it became something of a threat that if you don't do this, you don't dress this way, you don't get out of bed, and you don't come with me because I said so. So how is that tradition going to be passed down? How is that something that our kids are going to want to do? And if we try to make it a family thing, you're trying to throw family to this, there is no family connection to this. This is a forced military thing. Nothing against the military. But at the same time, if it's something that is just regimented because I said so, then it doesn't become something that becomes a part of them. Yes, it's sort of like having soil that you have a plant in, and there's water that was put into the soil, but the water is not touching any of the roots because there was no connection. The roots were never able to get anything. But if we're able to give over things in a way where the roots are able to receive the water, so then that tree that's now growing is going to see amazing produce. And they're going to want to give things over to their fruits so that those fruits can now turn into trees again, only if there's a positive association with it. So I think as grandparents, just to finish off the thought over here, as grandparents, if there are certain things that we've put into the family traditions, or we might have our own issues with, we have to first go inside ourselves, be curious, like, why was I so strict and mean when it came to leaving the house and going to church? Why was it that things were a certain way? Okay, I understand that because that's what was done to me. Well, how can I connect to it? If I could connect to it, then I could connect to my son. If I could connect to my son, he will then allow and give permission and want his child to go ahead and be connected to me.
We hear a lot of pain from grandparents who don't feel somewhat connected to their grandchildren. From your work, why is this happening more often now?
I think because a lot of things that have happened in the past have not been passed down in a way where there's a positive association with that specific tradition or religious ritual. And let's give an example over here. Let's say you have someone that has been living in America. Grandparents came over in the early 1900s, and they're not when they first came over, it was a struggle, and that was given as a constant struggle. And they grew up in a world where they saw their parents come home and just complain and complain and complain. And father had to work 60, 80, 100 hours in a week in a factory. That was really, really hard. And then he would come home every weekend and he just wanted to sleep or maybe have a few drinks just to sort of forget about all the stress that he's going through. So now there's a kid who's in his 20s, growing up in the 20s, 30s, or 40s, and he's watching his father work and work and work. And when he wasn't working, he was sleeping or drinking because he just wanted to release himself from that immense amount of stress. And now come Sunday, and family tradition was to, go to church. And the father's sleeping late, or he's complaining that he has to wake up and he has to go to church. Now that kid that's watching his father complain and be grumpy and the whole time looking at his watch, he's going to grow up in a world where like, okay, so this Sunday tradition is something that we do, but it's forced. And dad's doing it because he has to. Otherwise, mom is not going to be happy. So now that kid is going to be in a place like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to church on Sundays anymore. So now he may have some connection to his past. He may have connection to his parents. But the concept of going to church on Sundays is not going to be there for him. So now he's going to grow up in a world where, okay, I don't want to do this myself. And now he becomes a parent and he's going to try to force that on Sundays for his kid. His kid's going to be like, wait. You haven't gone to church your whole life, pretty much, your whole adult life. And now you want me to go out and do that? Like, where is that? What's your association and affiliation that you want me to connect to? If you don't have it yourself, why is it something that I want to connect to? And then they're going to put up a fight. And then if the phrase that's going to be used, the all-powerful authoritarian, because I said so, is going to be there, maybe, just maybe, it might work. It might help you win the battle, but you're going to lose the war when it comes to those traditions. So now that kid, who now is going to be the bearer of your grandkids, they're not going to have anything to do with that. So the concept of church, religion, God is not going to be there at all for them. And that's not going to be something that they're going to want to pass on to their kids. So if every time they come to your house, they know that you're going to force to go to church on Sundays, they'll be like, we're not coming anymore. We're not going to come at weekends. We're not going to come to your house on Sunday until maybe Sunday evening, maybe dinner, but nothing else, because I didn't connect to something that you're wanting me to do. So I don't want my kid to be involved in that at all. And I think that a concept of appreciation for things, if it's not given over properly, it's not going to be able to be something to connect with as time goes on. But it doesn't mean that it stops and it can't be done. I think things can still be taught. Things can still be given over. It's very possible for things to be given over. How do we do that? Create positive affiliation with it. So if we're going to tell our kids, you know what? I know I didn't do certain things properly. And I know I didn't teach a certain positive affiliation with it. And I messed up with that. First of all, those key words, I messed up. Saying that to our kids, I think, is so important. And let me teach you certain things, and let me show you how I've changed and how I've had my connection to religion in a way over the past few years, in a way that's actually not just comfortable, but it's working for me. And it's adding a certain sense of purpose and value to my life. So then your kids be like, oh, that's awesome for you. I don't have that. Okay, let me at least show you certain things. Show them that there are certain things that could be done to have a positive association. Now, this doesn't just apply to religions that we want our kids to maybe give over. It applies to even the concept of living here in America and what that's been like. And maybe there were certain struggles that we had when we were younger, but that doesn't mean that we have to tell our kids, really, you're complaining that you have to walk one block to the bus stop? Well, I had to walk uphill both ways to and from school every single day. Well, that's not going to be something our kids are going to connect to. But if we give things over in a way of like, wow, you're so lucky you have a bus to take, that you don't have to go into the subway. You're so lucky that you have an opportunity to get a coat, a winter coat, every 2 years when you grow out of it. I didn't get my next coat until my older brother grew out of his. So the fact that you get a new coat every 2 years, I'm so happy for you. That is awesome. So it can bring about a sense of appreciation, a gratitude to the things that you have, and you're happy for them not because of your struggle, but because of what they have. And therefore, they now have a sense of appreciation for something. And therefore, then they're going to give that over to others, to hopefully their kids. And then that's going to bring about that connection for what we're looking for. But if it's done in a negative way, and a negative association, it's not going to be wanting to be given over. So I think that's another very important thing. We talked about before of I messed up. And we can also say, hey, this is how I've been reconnecting and having a positive association with things so that then our kids, the bearer of our grandkids, can be in a place. And I say our, like I'm a grandfather already. I'm nowhere close to there right now. My oldest is still a teenager. But the concept that we're talking about here, I think, is if things are given over a more positive association, I think it's something that can go so far for what the connection is now going to be to it. And therefore, I'll want to give it over. I'll give one more example over here, Terry, as well. Let's talk about history in itself, the negative. We just talk about how bad things were. So then why would our kids or grandkids want to connect to something that has a negative association to it? And I think history in itself, we can show how amazing things are today because of the sacrifice that was done before. And it's not just about us, it's about the place that we come from. And teaching the negative stuff, I think, is really important for our school system to be able to teach the things that we messed up on, how we treated certain people, how we did certain things. Teach that because we say, this is what happened. We messed up. This is how things changed. Abraham Lincoln had a very big part to do that. The ending of certain laws had a big part to do that. Everyone could sit on anywhere they wanted on a bus, drink from the same water fountains, and it was awesome. And therefore, you get to do certain things today because of that. Not teaching in the way of like, oh, it was such a bad time, so we had to drink from separate water fountains. Of course, it was horrible, but don't teach it that it was horrible. Teach it that today we have it better because of what was then. And I think that's really important. That's how we bring about the concept of a connection. And things are passed down through a healthy connection. Teaching about the gratitude for today, teaching about the sacrifice from others, and therefore we appreciate it for what we have today. If that appreciation is not going to be there, there's going to be no connection to it. And I think that's a very, very big thing. As grandparents have a certain level of wisdom that they can give over when it comes to things that us as parents and our kids don't necessarily, we don't have the same vision. We don't have the same point of view to see those appreciations. I grew up in a world where there was no internet yet, but I could appreciate the internet because I remember the beginning stages of it and how things work and how a floppy disk probably had enough memory for one song from Taylor Swift today. And you could have that same size CD today, same size floppy disk could probably be 1 million Taylor Swift songs. And there's a certain appreciation that I have for that little thumb drive that can hold so much music to it. But if I give it over in a way like, wow, it was so cool how we didn't have this concept of collecting data to what we do today. It's very different than like, oh, things are so much better when we just had typewriters. It's not about that negative. It's about creating that positive. That's what we're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It truly does. If families listening today could take one little step towards stronger connection after this episode, what would you suggest that be?
I'm going to continue with the answer that I was giving before, having a gratitude. When we have a gratitude towards life for what it is for us right in front of us, then I think that energy spews over into the next generation. And if we're going to be negative and everything stinks and nothing is good and that person wronged me, this is messed up, I can't stand how blank happens, or this store does this, or the streets are this. Don't talk about that. It may be something that you feel, but put it through your own personal filter. Create a gratitude for what is, and that is more welcoming towards the next generations. So when you have gratitude yourself, it will then spew and leak onto others that will want to then be around you. But if you're going to be negative, if you're going to say, look, every single time I bring up religion, you just roll your eyes. Okay. Instead of doing that, maybe say like, okay, why is it something that doesn't work for you? Because I could say I've appreciated it and it's really helped me in a certain way. And I have so much gratitude for the fact that I have a connection. Where did that not work for you? And then when they say certain things that make us possibly go on defense in the sense of, well, because of the way you treated Sundays. And it was something that, you made us do and we didn't want to. We'd rather stay home. And you rolled your eyes and you grunted the whole time in the car. You were like a 2-year-old instead of getting on the defense. Like, well, do you know how hard I worked? You know how much I wanted to relax on Sundays? No. Our kids don't want to hear that. The bearers of our grandkids don't want to hear that. That's not going to help. Ask a question like, why was it that, Sundays weren't so fun? Okay. You know what? You're right. I did mess up. I should have rested more, knock out with my friends on Friday night so that I was hungover the entire Saturday and then had so many things to take care of on Sunday. You're right. I 100% messed up. And when that's go back to our first thing we're talking about today is that fallibility. When we have that sense of moving our egos aside to go ahead and say, you know what, I messed up. I think that's one of the three most important words as a parent. And imagine if there's a concept, if there's a family dinner and our 6, 7-year-old kid hears that dialogue between us and our parents, but between grandparents and now new parents. Imagine if that 6-year-old kid hears that dialogue happening between the previous generations. What do you think that's going to do for them and wanting to connect? It's golden. It's a golden ticket to connection because it's showing, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I messed up. Yeah, I'm older. And still connect. So let's do that. Let's have that connection. And that's, I think, a golden ticket for that grandchild.
And as we begin to wind down here, if there's one takeaway, one tool that listeners can put into their own toolbox or into their own pockets or sit on their dresser or their chester, what is that one tool that they could ascribe to, look at, and focus on?
It's a lot of pressure, Terry, you're putting on me to come up with one thing. And I hope...
Give me a couple of them real quick then.
Okay, so I'll give you one main point that I think is important. As human beings, we need others. And it's essential that we have others in order to survive. And you can have gone through a horror movie worth of generational traumas. And no one can take that away from you. But that doesn't mean you don't need others. So look for ways to connect. Look for ways to find things that could connect you. Not just regarding grandparents and grandkids, but even grandparents and their kids. Things may have been horrible for decades, but that doesn't mean that it can't be. We all love our children. Question is if we like them. So find the things that we can do to like them. Find the things that we can do to connect in a way where it brings about connection, because we need that. And just because we're old or older and we may be in a different stage in life doesn't mean that the next generation should be doing it on their own. They need us. And as grandparents, you're vital to the future of the family. You're vital to the future of this country because of what you have brought to the table. And you're worthy of being able to connect. So find the things that you could connect to with that generation that is so far removed from the upbringing that you had, still something that we need. So don't give up. Put yourself in a place to be able to see things from the other person's point of view. They may see and they may have a different language of speaking and connecting. Be curious with it. I think that's really important.
Good. And for those who are watching this podcast, how do they reach out to you?
So I would say the easiest way to get through to me would probably be a private message to me through Instagram. You can find me at Practice Your Way Method. Talk about this concept of building up confidence in self. I mean, you can also find me on my website. It's CUF Therapy. So that's CYUAH therapy.com.
Thank you for your time. Chananya, you've been great. Love you. And I hope to see you back here again.
Yes, same. I look forward to it. I love what you're doing. And please continue because this is such an important topic.
And I need your help along the way. Can't do it alone. Thank you.
We're going to do it together.
Thank you. Before we close, I want to leave you with this. Families don't fall apart because they don't care. They struggle when they don't feel heard, understood, or safe enough to speak honestly. If something from today's conversation resonated with you, I invite you to pause and think about one small conversation you can have this week. One question, one check-in, one moment of listening without fixing. If this episode was meaningful, please subscribe to The Power of Family. Share it with someone you love or send it to your family group chat. You can find more episodes and resources at thepowerofamilyus.com. Until next time, keep showing up, keep listening, and keep building connection. This is Terry Willis. Thanks for being here.